Guys, welcome to the Supper Talk podcast, where we're going to have all those dinner time conversations that nobody really wants to have. I'm Chris, and this is my dad, Steve.
Howdy.
Today, we're going to tackle all the world's problems by, I don't know, we're probably going to talk about how I drove a Cybertruck. uh, Before we get into that, what's been going on your plate? What's your week been?
I'm back in school, so that there's that. I have to learn the Hebrew alphabet, so I'm learning how to write Hebrew characters, which is like going to kindergarten all over again.
So, how does the alphabet differ? Because, like, obviously, it's not going to be like a 26 character to 26 character
Yeah,
translation, is it?
it it it's it's different in pretty much all ways.
Okay.
So none of the characters look like English characters, and there's not like a real um, one-to-one map where this is an A, this is a B, but there are that. What's the same is that each character represents a sound. So, when you look at languages, particularly ancient languages from that area, there's first there were uh, pictures, and every picture represented a particular word. So you had to have that. So that's like hieroglyphics, right? So you had to have like a really lot of pictures. And you can imagine that really makes it so that written communication is not
It's
common at
impractical.
all. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, so the people who were writing hieroglyphics on in the pyramids and on various things in the ancient Near East were that's all they did. That was their job, was to know how to do that. And they had to memorize, this picture of a bird means bird, but this picture of a bird means vulture or whatever. Um, so, and because of that, eventually they evolved into having alphabets where one character is one sound. So like b, p. There's and you just connect all those together to make words,
It's a
which is
phonetic alphabet.
yeah, yeah. And like when you do that in English, you don't even think of it. It's just because you were taught it when you're so young.
Yeah, it's your native language. This was one of the things that I loved when I was studying German. I was using Rosetta Stone, and it uses, like, so many people use Duolingo, and it's great, but Duolingo teaches you translations of an existing language into a separate language. But what Rosetta Stone did was it immersed you in the way that you were immersed into a language as a kid, so you more intuitively learn. So it'll show you a picture of a ball, and then you would see the word or then you would hear the word for a ball. You'd see der man die Kinder, and you'd see a man and a boy and realize, like, oh, der man die Kinder, okay, that there's these two things. Der man die Frau, okay, der is the masculine, die is the feminine. You kind of make these correlations the same way that you learned English. But yeah, you don't think about those things unless you're trying to learn a second language.
Yeah, and when we were living in Germany, I took a German class that was like, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks when I first got in country. They called it Gateway to German or something like that. Um, but then, like you talk about being immersed in it. I mean, we lived on the economy. There was a little what now we call bodegas, which is a Spanish word for grocery store. But we had a little like German bodega that was right next to our place in when I was working in Wiesbaden. But we were in a place called Heinerberg, I think, and then we moved to my job moved to Darmstadt, and uh, and our house moved to a little town called Weiderstadt.
No, I've never actually asked, and I don't know if you can talk. What were we doing in Germany at that time?
Oh yeah, it was a great job. So uh, it was I was in a unit that so in Vietnam the army had long range reconnaissance patrols. Um, and they were really great units. They gathered a lot of intelligence, but when Vietnam ended, they kind of shuttered all those units and consolidated everything in the two Ranger battalions. The First Ranger Battalion, which is where I was first stationed, and then also the Second Ranger Battalion. They both started in 1974. Um, but the challenge is, I mean, so reconnaissance was kind of a mission there, but not really. Yeah, so I mean, it was way more of a direct action, raids, ambushes. You're doing aggressive, um, uh, offensive operations. But then the army realized it had a gap, an intelligence collection gap, um, at the tactical and operational level. So they said, "Hey, we're going to start these long range units up again." Only they call them long range surveillance. So I was in a long range surveillance unit, and the thing that was really fun about it is, so this we they they started these units all over again, but we had lost all of the institutional knowledge and all of the, um, you know, uh, just the organizational knowledge, the tribal
The
wisdom.
generational wealth of having actually done something and passing that information to the next generation that's up and coming. Like this
Yeah.
is what
So
we talked about with the air traffic controllers, how all those retirees didn't get to share their knowledge with the next generation.
yeah. So we showed up, and it was a unit that didn't. We had a mission, but we didn't really have any um, tactics or procedures for how to get that done. So the first year was really spent, just developing our methods and methodology for conducting long range surveillance operations.
And this is
Um,
88.
Say again.
And this is 88.
Yeah, so this would have been, I was there,
This is
87, 88,
87.
and 89. Yeah, I think I might have got there a little bit at the end of 86. Um, but it was a lot of fun. It was learning a whole lot. We used a completely different type of planning methodology, um, than we did in the Ranger Battalion. So I had to learn how to conduct isolation type planning, and and so yeah, it was an intelligence collecting job. Um, but we basically would have a target. We would move to a hide site where we could observe that target, and then we would stay on that target for a defined period of time, and had to learn all kinds of stuff about um, Soviet vehicles and what they looked like, and all kinds. So, like on a railhead or on the back of a truck, covered in canvas, you had to be able to, like, oh, this is this kind of vehicle, this kind of vehicle, um, and I learned a lot about Soviet tactics and order of battle, the way that the Soviets um, planned on fighting wars, which is pretty much the same way the Russians fight their wars now.
So uh I think this is kind of relevant, and it's fun for me now, like, you know, so many people don't tell their kids about what they do in the military because kids don't need to know. But now where I'm at in life and the amount of attention that I pay, I can understand what it is that you were doing. So I think the conversation that we're going to have today on the Signal app will be extra interesting because you do have a little bit more expertise and understanding of how one nation could potentially be spying on another nation, and what some of these implications could actually be. Uh, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah, and while I was there, it was I started out as a long range surveillance team leader, but then I moved into an operations job. So I I did a lot of planning and the development of target folders and mission packets. So so and I was a courier, so like I had orders so I can go pick up classified information and take it from one place to the other. And so yeah, I had a good bit. In fact, there's so technically I had three jobs while I was in the Army. I was an infantry guy for almost all of my career. I had a very brief time where I worked as a reenlistment NCO, but so I got another job as a recruiter. So that was my other MOS as a recruiter, and then my third job was as an intelligence NCO. So I worked for about a year as an intelligence NCO. Um, so yeah, I understand the way that you know uh, footballs like that get fucked.
So, have you had any experience with the Signal app in itself?
No, no, it's a new app. I don't have any reason to keep anything um under wraps like that. So yeah, I have no need to use it. I understand what it does, and uh, but
So
I
the 5051 protests that I told you about a couple of weeks ago,
yeah,
um, when I was invited to talk to all of the leadership of the local group that was getting coordinated with the national group, that was the app that they wanted me to use. And I'm kind of the same as you. I don't have anything that I need to be hiding on my phone because I already know since the Patriot Act that none of that shit's private. So realistically, I've never needed one of these apps, but I understand why a lot of people do. So I signed up for it, and like it's pretty deliberate if you're adding somebody. It's pretty apparent when somebody comes into a conversation because it says such and such added such and such into the conversation, such and such has left the conversation. And it's not like you can really quietly announce that you've added somebody by mistake. So to catch everybody up, there's a conversation of 18 cabinet members, including Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, um, and Vice President J.D. Vance, a couple other cabinet members, and I can't remember what is his position. Matt Waltz.
he's a national security advisor.
National Security Advisor. He has admitted to have been responsible for adding a journalist from The Atlantic. And I listened to an interview with this journalist this morning. He was interviewed for 30 minutes on the Daily, and when he gets added, he thinks that it's a scam, and he's like, "All right, whatever. I'm just gonna see where this goes." And he's in this chat for a good couple of days before things start becoming a lot heavier with the information that they're covering. And he says that there's this point where he's like, this might be real, but this can't be real. This just can't be real. So they wind up talking about all of these plans to send missiles to Houthi rebels in Yemen. and they say the very specifics at this time. Planes are going to be going with these kind of missiles, and it'll be launching at these sites, and it'll have impact at this time. And he's grocery shopping, and he's like, all right, I guess in 2 hours I'm gonna find out if this is real or not. And then it is. So what his concern is, like, Signal is obviously supposed to be a very secure app. And that was the reason that we were using, is it's secure end to end. Nobody can really know what it is that you message. It's not like Signal has any kind of records, whereas if you texted somebody on T-Mobile, it's very possible that the actual records of what it is that you texted are on T-Mobile's server somewhere. You're not going to have that with Signal. And the way that the cabinet had set it up was that all the messages would automatically delete after 24 hours. So they're under the assumption that this is just going to be conversation that doesn't necessarily need to go into the National Archives, because it doesn't need to go on record, and it can be the conversation that they can have behind closed doors. But now you have a journalist behind that closed door seeing everything that's happening. So the implications are, there are uh, foreign adversaries that are actively looking for information on these people's phones. And that's the whole reason that they have skiff setups, and that they have the ability to have secure conversations in secure places. And you're not supposed to be using this. So I feel like this is the time in the administration where I'm like, oh, ha, this is what we were talking about. This is exactly what we were saying. There's fucking incompetence, and now it's demonstrating itself. This is why we didn't want this guy in office. Sorry, had to get that out a little bit.
Yeah, there's the uh I mean, there's really two things there. The first is, um how did Walsh add that guy to the chat? And
Yeah.
that's the big thing is, I mean, it's like if you're going into a skiff, when you're checking everybody's ID, you're looking at an access roster, and you don't let anybody go in the room that isn't on that clearance list. So this would be like, oh yeah, well, we know you don't have a clearance, but go ahead, go on into the room.
Right.
There's so
Or there's also an implication of, what if they're trying to get a journalist to be on the in to actually report for the administration on the in? And that could have its, like, completely dubious undertones to it. And who's to say that that's what it is? But it just leaves too much for interpretation, and it's so far past accountability.
there's now again, I would there's I never attribute something to maliciousness if incompetence is a reasonable explanation. So I
Fair.
think I think Waltz just made a mistake, and he was he was setting this chat room up, and he was adding a bunch of different people into it because he asked all the principals, who's your point of contact. So then he's adding like the chiefs of staff and whoever they had designated as their representatives. So he was adding a lot of people, and um and I can see how you'd make a mistake. I honestly can. There's a if you're running it off of a platform where the contacts that you're looking at aren't aren't all in there. So like if you're on there's a system that the US has set up called the SIPRNet that is designed for transmissions of classified information. Well, so you're not going to send something to somebody who's not on the SIPRNet through the SIPRNet, because it's a closed system. That's just the way that it works. Um, but yeah, if you're doing it over a signal, then that's something that you could do, and you can obviously make a mistake, and he obviously made that mistake. But that's a different question uh, then is Signal a robust um, platform? And I know that it's end to end encrypted. I'm assuming that the encryption keys are sufficient because the CI director, Director Ratcliffe, uh, testified under oath to the Senate that that when he first got the job, they installed Signal on his work laptop um, and his work phone, and they told him that Signal was approved for for having sensitive conversations. Um, so 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 I just have to take the CIA director at face value in that he has it installed on his work computer. So at least within the CIA's intelligence apparatus, they've they've looked at that program and decided that the encryption capabilities are sufficient for government purposes. But he also didn't say whether or not he was using his work phone or his personal phone, and neither did Director Gabbard. She didn't say which phone she was working. So it's entirely possible that they were just using their regular cell phone. Um, but again, that's a different thing. So it's on the cell phone. So there are physical security requirements that you might be concerned about if they were using it on their personal phone. But we don't know that. But um, the data, the information that was contained in um, the Signal chat. The only reason it's been released is because that journalist who said that he didn't think it was real was taking enough time to take a screenshot of every conversation that
Oh, that
was
takes no time at all. That's not an excuse whatsoever that he's
no,
taken the time. That's literally click, 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 click. And if I thought that I was in the middle of that and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, what kind of treasure trove do I have?" Absolutely, I'm taking screenshots.
yeah, but so the only and don't get me wrong, I'm not. That's one of the things that I think that the administration has kind of screwed the pooch on this on is, like uh, Hegseth attacked the journalist.
Mm-hmm.
The president attacked the journalist. Um, well, the journalist is being a journalist, and they're the ones that put him in the conversation. So. Uh, so yeah, there's completely legitimate. And when he first released the information, he withheld the most sensitive aspects of the
And it
conversation. So he's
wasn't until the committee said, "Oh no, there was nothing confidential that was put out there." And he's like, "Okay, if there's nothing confidential, then here's the stuff that I didn't want to put out."
That's exactly right. And so he did. So obviously he's a credible journalist. He's a credible journalist with integrity regarding national security information. So there's no reason. I mean, he works for the Atlantic for crying out loud.
Right.
So yeah, so he's obviously not going to be a friend of the administration. And again, if there's anything that makes you kind of scratch your head, it's like, well, why on earth does the national security advisor have that guy as a contact in his phone? Um, and, you just got to assume that because of his position, maybe he's doing background. So, a lot of times somebody will say, hey, I can give you an interview, but it's all going to be on background. So that means that you can say, well, an administration official said, but they won't be like the national security advisor said this. Um, and it's kind of a handshake agreement that administrations have always had with Washington journalists that if they have a conversation that's on background, then the identity of the person who gives you that information is not disclosed.
I- After listening to the interview, this doesn't seem like any kind of situation where it would have been a Washington insider providing context to something.
Yeah, no,
This,
I don't. Yeah, I don't think. I honestly don't think that Waltz was like, "Ooh, I'm going to include this guy from the Atlantic, and it's going to be salacious." I think there's he was like, "Oh crap, I can't believe this happened," um, and uh, and I think everybody on the administration is just kind of closing ranks around him and saying, "Hey, he made a mistake." The president even said that he admitted that he made a mistake. Um, and and again, there. I mean, there is some levity, I think, with regard to um, the volume that the Democratic politicians are making about this, because without a doubt, in my lifetime, yeah, probably in my lifetime, some of the Watergate files were pretty close, um, but the biggest scandal related to this that's similar was Secretary Clinton's um, exclusive use of personal devices, to include storing all of her emails, classified and unclassified, on a server that was in a closet at her campaign headquarters.
and I agree with you. But that's the thing, is that these are the exact same people that are crucifying her for doing the exact same thing that they get caught in the act of doing. So like the hypocrisy in Washington is why I'm such a moderate, is because it's bullshit on both sides. But there's egg on their face and they're denying that there's yolk everywhere.
There's well again there's I'm not certain I would agree with that they're denying it. I mean, the
I would
president.
I would say that with the way that they're attacking this journalist for bringing up their mistake and trying to discredit his credibility, and especially with the way that Hegseth was attacking him, I'm not seeing it being a reasonable response or taking any kind of accountability to the action that was happening. Now, does Walt say like, "Yes, I'm going to take accountability," but what does that mean? You're going to say, "I'm sorry," and then nothing's going to happen. You're not. You're going to still hold this position of power when you've shown that you can't even be able to have a text message conversation with a couple of people and make sure the right people are in the conversation. Like, to me, this is an issue of, if that had gotten to somebody who is looking into the information on personal phones, because Signal could be on a personal phone very easily in the same way that it could be installed on their work phones. If somebody had been able to get that information that this journalist had 2 hours in advance, the pilots of those jets could have been in danger. Like, they could have been a less effective operation. It could have made America look even worse than this embarrassment from a journalist. And that's where I feel like the implication and the focus is on. Like, yeah, does it seem like it's a benign thing? Yes, if I accidentally add you to a text message thread with mom, that might get a little bit awkward, but we're not talking about bombing another country.
Yeah, there's again the information went to the journalist because that journalist was included in the chat. That was the mistake. But there's no indication that that uh, that beyond that journalist, the information was disclosed until after the operation. Uh, and I mean, the president had a cabinet meeting, and in the cabinet meeting, a journalist asked him if he thought that uh, Waltz should be punished or fired in some way. The journalist asked him that, and the president said, "Nope. He made a mistake. He learned a lesson, and we're moving forward." So, if the president of the United States, who's his boss, right, um, and then said that and said that like in a room filled with journalists during a cabinet meeting. I don't know how that is covering it up. Um, and uh, and again,
I don't necessarily think that I'm thinking they're covering it up as much as they're trying to really play it down.
yeah, and there's and so like when I look at the information, so why is it not classified? Because when I look at the information that was in that chat, um, if I were, working as a classifying authority for the Department of Defense, I would have by default classified that as top secret information. And the reason is because there's like three buzzwords, right? So if and the buzzwords all deal with unauthorized disclosure. So if the unauthorized disclosure of the information would cause damage to U.S. national security, then that information is classified at the confidential level. If it would cause serious damage, um, then it's classified at the secret level. And if the unauthorized disclosure of it could cause um, grave damage to U.S. national security, then it's normally classified at top secret. Now, why I say that is not Hegseth's detailing of the delivery platforms, because again, you mentioned a weapons type of weapons, but he didn't discuss, at least in none of the information that I saw, he didn't discuss weapons types. So he's like, oh, the F-18s are going to launch. So we know that there are F-18s, but an F-18 can carry a 5,000-pound bomb. They can carry a nuclear weapon. I mean, there's a lot of different weapons that can be loaded on that. And he also mentioned an MQ-9, which is a drone. Um, but again, it didn't talk about what types of weapons those were, which is different. It's a delivery platform, and a weapons type is a different. But either way, there's um, uh, it, that information I probably would classify it at the most secret level. Um, but the real damaging information was the discussion between Vice President Vance and Secretary Hegseth regarding um, uh, our relationships with our European allies, because the Secretary of Defense saying, I'm tired of bailing the Europeans out, and he really went off. He made it
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
it'll be very difficult.
Pathetic.
Yeah, so he made it more difficult for, but I don't, to a certain extent, I don't think that that's wasn't known. I mean, the vice president kind of made known during his speech in Germany that the United States is pretty upset um, with uh, with Europe and our European allies, and this, the reality of is hardly any goods that are going to or from the United States go through the Suez Canal. We have no reason to send things through the Suez Canal. It's there's For anything that we're trading from the uh, through the Indo Pacific, they can just come straight across onto one of our ports on the West Coast, or they can travel through the Panama Canal and not have to deal with the Suez Canal. So we don't send goods shipped through the Suez Canal, but the Europeans, They got
Use
a
it a
lot
lot.
of stuff. They got a
Yep.
lot of stuff to get. So again, it's very similar to Ukraine. Who has the most at stake for a war, for the war that's taking place on European soil? The Europeans. And now the Europeans are saying, "Oh, we're gonna start taking more responsibility for our own security." But when Biden was the president and was begging them to send munitions to Ukraine, they're like, "Oh, we can't do it, man. We ain't got enough money." And so the United States ends up giving all this money to Ukraine, not loaning it, giving it to them, and it took like the first 2 years of the conflict for the Biden administration to even uh, to to get some response from the Europe. And Germany is the dirtiest of all of them. Germany's been there's that whole Nord Stream 2 pipeline was designed for Germany. Germany has been buying even in the midst of all the um,
And what's this that I saw earlier today about them closing down one of their nuclear plants?
Yeah, they're not closing down one of them. They're closing down all of them, and uh, so it's and so they're closing down their own independent power, and then they're buying uh, oil and gas from Russia, and expecting everybody else in the world to put sanctions on Russia. Uh, and again, there's of all the countries in Europe that should be worried about Russia being pissed off at them, it's Germany. Because Germany killed a whole lot of Russians and they killed a whole lot of Ukrainians. So, so, but it's the same thing. It's like we're bombing the Houthis because the Houthis are launching missiles and attacking ships that are carrying cargo bound for Europe.
Yeah, it's
Why?
it's none of our stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's what JD Vance would. And I'll be honest, out of that whole
Well, and that was the
exchange,
only interaction that he really had throughout the entire thing was just the optics of I'm not sure if this is the right time to play it. And once he put that input, that was it.
yeah, yeah, and what, later on he said, "Hey, I'll do if you guys want to do this. I'm behind you, and I'll be, I'll publicly support you." And he did do that. He did,
Mhm.
right after the attack. So he did everything that he said he was going to do. But if I think of JD Vance running for president after this administration, that's a good look because I think um, there is uh, there's a sentiment among a lot of Americans that uh, that we've been bailing Europe out. We've been paying for their defense ever since World War II, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And now, I mean, they're literally like trying to. Uh, they want to have their own nuclear umbrella, and I mean anybody who thinks that it's a good idea to just give Germany nuclear weapons and say and allow them to use their own judgment in whether or not they're going to use those those nuclear weapons in a conflict against Russia. That's a history lesson. There's that we haven't had. So so I agree with Vice President Vance. I don't think we should be um, bombing Houthis because they're attacking um, uh, U.S.
Because
ships
that'll put
or
more
or
pressure on them to set up their own defenses and take care of their own problems and let us deal with our stuff.
now there is another piece that's not being talked about, and and that is the resurgence of Al Qaeda and the resurgence of Al Qaeda um, broadly across the entire Middle East. So, so we are going. I think we are at a real risk because of the open border that we had for so long on our southern border. Uh, there's, there's Sarah Adams on uh, uh, Sean Ryan's podcast has been sounding this alarm for quite some time, and she's a person who would know. So she's a very very credible voice in what's going on in that area of the world, way more so than the United States, because if there's anything that happened besides just the horrible optics and the bad taste in their mouth for the people who are veterans of Afghanistan, but nobody in that part of the world thinks that the United States is as a uh, is a trustworthy ally. So they're not going to be giving information to the United States, intelligence information to operatives of the United States, because we we just abandoned them, and we left them, to fend for themselves and to try and the ones who weren't killed by um,
Have
the
reason to
Taliban.
distrust us.
Yeah, there's a lot of distrust.
Yeah.
So what's happening is that there are the you know the organizations that went over and were trying to get those people out. So these are organizations like Save Our Allies and others um, who uh, who used private money and private operators to go rescue a whole bunch of people out of Afghanistan. Um, those people have credibility. They have the credibility that the U.S. doesn't. So it's interesting that the civilian intelligence collection capacity is is much greater than the government intelligence, as far as human intelligence in the Middle and Near East.
So I'm pretty sure that we're not going to get anywhere with solving the world's problems. So, how do you feel about conversation cards to segue into our next bit?
Yeah, there's a I could talk about it for a long time, but there's a
We unfortunately don't have a whole lot of time today because I today was a busy day. And that's what I will actually that'll be the story is the second half of the show is what the busy day was. But today's table topic, what do you miss most about being younger?
um hmm, there
I am closer to being younger than you are. Uh, so I think that one of the things that I'm trying to rediscover is things being magical again because you get so trite in your daily activities that everything just becomes like, yeah, I've done that, and I've done that again, and I've done that again. But everything was new when you were young, like everything. So everything was exciting. And that's like the thing that I miss the most about being young. Because, the older you get, the less new experiences you get and the less magic that there is.
yeah, I think for me uh there's it's the rough and tumble of it. There's so when you're young, you don't this is similar to what you just mentioned. You don't really know how things are going to play out. So you basically just do the best you can with the information that you've got. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, right? There's a lot of, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to try this and we're going to see how it works. Um, and, uh, and I heard a definition, this week, for, traditionalism. And, a tradition is an experiment that worked. So, a tradition didn't start out with everybody doing it. It started out with one person, somebody innovated, somebody tried to do something new, and it worked. And then somebody else tried it and it worked for them too. So then they figured out that it worked across a broad spectrum of situations, and it worked consistently over and over again. So that experiment that worked became a tradition. Um, and 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 now so much of what I rely on is tradition. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I voted for, you know, candidates of both party in presidential elections. I generally think that both parties are uh, not helpful for the United States, but it's what we've got. It's our system, and that's what we've got. But I am a traditionalist, and I think that the things that make our country very unique and very effective are they're not happenstance. They, the our three branches of government was a design that worked. Our having a Senate where people are elected for 6-year terms, and there's every state gets two, no matter how big or small they are. And then you compare that to the House, where it's equal apportionment, and they're only there for 2 years. So that makes our Congress a a mess, and it makes it hard to get things done. Um, but
But it
that
makes it so that way the best gets through.
That's exactly right. The only way that anything's going to get through is through compromise, and and when we look at at the things that we're not willing to compromise on, that's where we're the most divided at, because we can't come up with political solutions. So
Second Amendment, women's rights, universal health care.
abortion care, immigration rights, all these things are on both sides. We're like, nope, nope. There, we're not gonna compromise. So we're either gonna open up the borders for everybody, or we're gonna close it for everybody. And there's
There's no
no,
rational middle ground.
yeah, yeah. So there's and anyway, so the uncertainty of youth is something that I guess I miss.
So I uh I like to do mischievous things, and it makes me feel young, and it makes me feel silly, like I'm playing pranks on people. So for most people in my life, they know that I drive a car that has the license plate Satan. And it's really fun for me to troll everyone in one of the most conservative states in America with a car that says Satan. And when I got it, it was when the Satanic Temple got their tax exempt status, and I immediately went in and I was like, look, if you've approved Jesus, you have to approve Satan as well. So it got approved, and I've had this license plate ever since. And it always starts really interesting conversations. So shout out to Kim. I went and got lunch this afternoon, and while I'm in the parking lot, I am backing up into a space, and there's this woman that's just standing there, and she's just waiting for me. And turn my car off. I'm getting my sunglasses taken off, and she's getting into her car, and she says, I just don't want to stand in Satan's way, is all. So I was telling her that, I have this mostly as a way of being able to be kind of the contrarian and start conversations with people. But it definitely gets some negative looks, especially in this state. So, after all the conversations that we've been having about Elon Musk over the past couple of episodes, and seeing how many protests are happening at Tesla dealerships across America, and also knowing that this Saturday there's going to be a protest at the Tesla dealership that I went to this morning, I decided I'm going to test drive a Cybertruck. To answer the question that nobody was answering, what gets more hate? The car that has Satan as a license plate or just driving a Cybertruck in general? And I want to say one thing just to be perfectly clear. I would not give the piss from my dick to Elon Musk if he is on fire. But oh my God, that car is so much fun to drive. Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. It was so much fun to drive. And it's really cool. It's really, really cool. And I understand why people like it, and it's still ugly as sin, but God, I would never buy one of those things in a million years. And surprisingly, nobody was shitty to me on the road, which was nice because I actually got to enjoy the experience. But so I go to the Tesla dealership this morning, and I've got this appointment. You can go on to Tesla's websites. If you have a dealership in your area, you can schedule a test drive, and legitimately go make a decision for yourself about a benign vehicle. That's really the point that this whole story needs to be, because I legitimately pre-ordered a Cybertruck. And I don't know if I had ever told you this. I watched the live event when he was announcing the Cybertruck years ago. And at the time, I was still driving my Scion. And I knew that I wanted to get into something, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to get into electric. And I wanted to see what kind of truck options were going to come into the electric world, because I knew I wanted to get out camping. So when Tesla announced the Cybertruck and Elon Musk is doing his whole introduction to the vehicle, as soon as he threw that ball into the window and it shattered, and you see on his face that wasn't supposed to happen, and then he just does this whole um yeah, so like he's hiding. I in that moment I was like, he is embarrassed. He is gonna fix that, and it is gonna be cool as shit. This is gonna be an awesome car. I'll give you $100 for a pre-order on that. Um, and I legitimately, my pre-order number was one of the first 1,000 pre-orders in America. And I held it for years. But the problem was I held it for years, and it was just it never got out of development. It was just like, oh, it's too wide, it's too large on the roads. We can't make this happen. We're having production and assembly issues. So I eventually settled on the Forester. And then I had had the Forester for 3 years before they actually released the first Cybertrucks retail. So by that point, I'm already halfway done paying for my car. So I go into the dealership this morning and I explained to the lady, look, here's what it is that I really want to do. I want to know, is the is it a decent experience? Because, I was looking at it in the beginning and I didn't get it at launch. And now I've been watching all of the recalls over the last couple of years. So if people want to get mad at a benign vehicle, they can be mad at the fact that it's not that great of a vehicle because of the amount of recalls that it's had. Um, but the things that I'd be interested in are, where is the industry with electric at right now? Because the last time that I test drove an electric car was another Tesla about 5 years ago when I was in Seattle, and I tried the autopilot on a Model Y, and it was magic. Like it was terrifying for the first time. And if you've ever driven Seattle traffic, it's horrible. Like it is the worst traffic I have ever been through. But then to trust your life into the hands of a robot in the middle of Seattle traffic is terrifying. And magic at the same time, because it worked. So it's been years. There's been a lot of development, and a company out of China, BYD, just made an announcement this last week that their big competition to Tesla in that part of the world uh, has introduced new charging technology that can get their cars to 95% capacity in 5 minutes. And that's been my big hang up on electric. There either needs to be fast charging or there needs to be a quick swap battery. Because right now, if I were to go to Haley's family in Wyoming, it's two 45-minute stops along the way, and it adds an extra hour and a half, 2 hours to a trip that we're trying to get done quickly. So that's why electric's not quite there for us yet. So I know we're on the precipice of it. I want to experience what it is, and I'm kind of curious to see what this thing can do. And man, like you can adjust the height on it. The ride height is amazing. She booked an additional hour for me so I could go out to the desert to the places that I go shooting that have really uneven terrain where you actually need a truck or some kind of lifted vehicle. And it was a lot of fun, and it handled really well, and because it's heavy as shit, it deals with wind really well. Uh, but it was this experience that in the middle of it, I realized, like, this is a benign item. It's a car, and yet everybody is putting politics on this car, because they're pissed off at Elon, and I get that. I get that. I'm not gonna spend $80,000 on this car, but it makes me a little bit more understanding of how the very progressive person who bought their Model Y 6 years ago really thought that they were making a change that was positive, and whether or not they choose to acknowledge it, Elon Musk is selling electric cars to conservatives now, which how else are you going to get the other side? 6 years ago, those people would say, "Oh, nobody on that side of the aisle would ever get something like this. They're not progressive enough." Okay, well now they're buying it. And at the end of the day, there's no politics to a vehicle. It's a car, and it's a fun car.
There's yeah, I think there's we got a lot of Teslas here in Boulder. I mean, a lot of Teslas. And in my neighborhood, I think there's probably half a dozen Cybertrucks.
There's tons here in Boise.
There's now um I think my view of the Cybertruck is it's a very Muskian vehicle in that uh Musk uh won't start with anything. He has to begin with a blank slate. So when they designed the Cybertruck, when they announced it at that event that you were talking about, it came out and it doesn't look like anything that's ever been on
It's
the road.
divisive.
Yeah, so um so then you have to ask, well, does it do what trucks are supposed to? Did do we think that Elon Musk sat down with uh, with people who've been driving pickup trucks for their entire life, with uh, general constructionists and with painters and with folks on a ranch, um, and use that input to develop the Cybertruck. And I mean, the ones that I look at, I don't see that at all. I see it as a very novel SUV that has a big.
And that's how I look at it too. Is I Does it have some capabilities? Maybe, but to me, it's the Toyota 4Runner. It's not necessarily or it could be a Tacoma, but the Tacoma doesn't have the same kind of thing. It's not like this big Ford F-350 that you're hauling two horses behind you. And most of the things that I've seen people do with Cybertrucks are like these pop-up tents that are in the back that you could put in the back of a Kia anyways. And even the things that I'm doing is like, okay, I take my lifted Forester out, and these are the places that I would go with it. But do I think that I would ever see that on a construction site? No. And again, I think that that comes back to the whole battery issue that people don't trust. You know, most of these ranges that they're talking about are if the car has two passengers in it, and that's it. But what happens if you don't, if you're towing a boat? What happens if you are hauling a crap ton of lumber? You know, what happens to your actual capacity when your battery's having to work more? Like, do you go from a 300-mile range down to a 200-mile range, or does it get closer to like a 125-mile range?
Yeah, and that's what uh I mean, if you just look at companies that did something different with their electrical vehicles. Um and you look at Ford, and I mean, Ford is a good uh comparison to Tesla, because if you look at what Ford did for the car, uh when they were making Model A's, and then eventually Model T's. Um, there before that, before those cars were on the road, everybody was riding, uh, horse-drawn carriages, and and I mean, you could just imagine, you know, uh, the the entire industry that was taking care of horses, cleaning the streets from horse crap, um, shoeing horses, feeding horses. There was this entire economy that was built around people getting around town and going in between towns using 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 horses. Or like there's a historical church in this town that has a big bell that's out front of it, and that bell was shipped here from Chicago in an ox-drawn cart. So I mean, there's so oh, hang on, I gotta I just had I had a different program crash. But anyway, so but uh but Henry Ford changed all that, and he made it so that not only was the you know combustion engine a reliable source, it was mass producible. And he did that in a way I mean, if you look at the first 5-day work week was instituted by Henry Ford. So not only was he making um, uh, cars efficiently, he was making cars efficiently and creating jobs for people uh, that were stable and provided um, enough income that the people who were building the cars could also become his customers, because they could afford his product. Um, and if you look at the best selling electric truck in the country is the
The
Ford.
Lightning, isn't it?
Say again?
It's the Lightning, isn't it?
Yeah, the Ford F-150 Lightning. And Ford took a very, very different approach than Musk did. The Ford F series of trucks is the most successful vehicle brand ever in the history of the world. I mean, people have been driving F-150s, F-250s for decades, and they are the truck of choice for people who make a living working out of their trucks. So what Ford did is they're like, oh, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to electrify our our proven platform. So they took a traditionalist approach. They didn't say, let's just redesign the truck and throw everything that's happened in the past, throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Your argument is flawed for Ford in general because what they did to the Mustang legacy with the Mach E is a fucking tragedy.
Well, again, the Mach E is so the best selling
They
SUV
they took a
crossover.
great sports car and they turned it into a crossover SUV. Like you have okay, yeah, it's got Mustang on the side of it. That is not a Mustang. It is them capitalizing off of a brand that is recognized and just introducing people to electric. And I think that that was the worst decision that Ford made because the Ford Mustang is an iconic American sports car and having ridden around in a Mach E, they are the just most generic, gross. There's nothing exciting about it, and it's a crossover SUV. I will agree with you 100%. What they did with the F-150 Lightning is a continuation of the legacy, and I think that that's what should have happened to be able to really introduce people to electric trucks and everything that Rivian has been doing because I think Rivian is doing a fantastic job in this area.
Yeah, there's a lot of Rivians here in town too, and they also Amazon Rivian made the new delivery trucks that Amazon is using. So,
Yep.
but I mean, if you look at the entire Mustang brand right now, I mean, uh, again, Ford does very, very interesting things, but the Mustang GTD is the most powerful street legal car that you can get in the United States. It's a so
Is
the
it internal combustion?
yeah, there's a
Okay, then you're proving my point.
yeah, there's like so again there's a but the so the Mustang Mach E is the best selling electric crossover SUV in the US is Tesla's Model Y. Um and the number 2 is the Mustang Mach E. So, uh, so in terms of sales, they're being beat by Tesla's, but Tesla just has this word of mouth marketing that does really well for them. But but they're again they got the number 2, so they got the number 1 truck with the F-150 Lightning. They got the number 2 crossover SUV with the Mustang Mach E, and they've got the number 1 commercial van with the Transit electric vehicle. So and there's a lot of there's it I mean, particularly if you put it into the context of, oh, okay, well, why would I buy from a particular company? There's Musk he's complained for a long time that he doesn't know why uh you know the Biden administration didn't like him. They didn't wouldn't approve his company for um uh, electric vehicle credits and so on and so forth. But the reason that nobody within the Democratic Party establishment trusts Elon Musk is because how anti-union he is. Um, and so so the Tesla workforce, Musk is like, oh, we don't have engineers in the United States that can build these cars. So he spends he brings all these people over on H-1B visas and uses them for 3 to 6 years. Um, and then they basically use Tesla as a stepping stone for becoming an American citizen. So I understand why they're doing it, but what I don't understand is how people give Musk some credit for being an American manufacturer when he's using, even for the products that he's building in the United States, he's using foreign labor
Yep.
to build those cars. And the reason that he doesn't need to use union labor is because there nobody's going to make a big stink about unionizing when he can
When they're
throw them
given an
out of the country.
opportunity to come to America.
That's exactly right. So
Yeah,
he's
like and that's the thing that a lot of people don't necessarily recognize. If that's your in, I have one of my clients, he's from Bangladesh. Brilliant guy, like absolutely brilliant. He works at Micron. And the thing is, he is one of the hardest working people I know, and he appreciates every opportunity that America has provided to him. And he's told me about his village back in Bangladesh. He does not want to go back to that whatsoever. He busts his ass. And I remember when he got his business card that actually had his PhD for what he was studying, he was so proud of it that he gave me his business card. And I was like, this is awesome. I already have your contact information, but I'll take your card. And that is an incentive that natural born citizens don't understand. Period. Like we don't get that at all. And the idea of like, oh, we need to unionize, we have collective rights. They never had that. They get to come here and they get to have opportunity. Cool. We're over here. Let's do it.
now again, compare that to Ford. Ford has almost 60,000 hourly employees, all represented by the United Auto Workers. So he's got, almost 60,000 employees in factories all across the United States. And their average hourly wage is 61 bucks an hour. So there's lots of people who are making less than 61 bucks an hour, but that means there's lots of people who are making more than 61 bucks an hour. And these are the hourly employees working in their factories. So Ford is figuring out how to not just compete, but compete and win using Americans that are union labor, represented by union labor, and have significant wage and benefits packages, so that again, those people who are working in Ford factories can afford to buy Ford products. Uh,
And Haley's parents, every 3 years, for as long as she can remember, they get a new Ford. They trade in their old Ford, they get a new Ford. The brand loyalty to Ford is another thing because people do recognize that they are buying American values when they buy Ford. Now, me personally, all about that Japanese Subaru, all about it. And I'm going to stick with my Subaru until it dies because you did that to me. I'm blaming the Baja, the Legacy, the Outback, the everything that you ever had. 100% Subaru. I will never buy American.
there's uh, the I just saw a tidbit when I was looking at Ford. The um, Almost half, 43% of their employees were hired before 2007. So that means almost half of their employees have been
Our
working at that
career
company
employees.
for more than 18 years. So they've got brand loyalty, they've got employee loyalty, they pay their people well, and they've got great products that are selling, uh, uh, um, and filling
Hand
a,
over foot. Yeah.
yeah. So there's and again, it's one of those things that when people think of conservative or traditionalist, they right away they go Republican, and they think that everything that the Republican party stands for is traditional, but that's not the case. I mean, there's the union movements that that did away with child labor, that did away with, you know, uh, mine workers that are, piling up, literally standing on top of the elevator. And, we had all those mine accidents and railroading accidents, all that was fixed because organized labor, uh, uh, worked in the United States for a very long time. And, and, there's, the, the UAW, the United Auto Workers, gets a bad rap for the downfall of Detroit because the car companies that were in the 1950s, everything was being built in Detroit. Um,
But wasn't
and De-
NAFTA more related to Detroit's fall than the unionization?
Yeah, so there was a lot of things there. So people thought that, oh well, since those union employees are getting those great salaries, $61 an hour, right? We got to go to Mexico, we got to go to Canada, we've got to go, and that's how we ended up with this convoluted uh, um, uh, supply chain for our vehicles, because even vehicles that are being manufactured in the United States, they have like a mirror that comes from Canada, because Canada will build the mirrors, but they won't build the whole cars. Um, so we've got this convoluted supply chain where a part is made in Canada, then it comes to the United States, and another piece part goes, and then that goes down to Mexico, and there's all these crazy things. But uh, but yeah, so there was a lot of reasons um uh why vehicles moved out of Detroit. But again, there's not so there are, it's like Toyota has factories here in the United States because it's cheaper for Toyota to build things in the United States than ship them here from Japan. And if you look at Japan, it's not that big a country, so they don't have
They
room
can't hold
for,
inventory.
yeah. Um, there's, but again, like General Motors. General Motors is no longer an American car company. So, they're so a Chevy or a Dodge or a Pontiac, none of those brands have history in the United States, but they're not American car companies anymore. They're global car companies, mostly owned by European corporations. There's but Ford is an American car company. It was the original American car company. They're still here in the United States. They're and they're so I look at Ford. When I walk around the neighborhood, I see it's like there's a guy right down the street from me. He's a building contractor, has this beautiful Ford F-350, um, and uh, and it's a really great truck. It's got these little steps built in so that you can climb up into the bed really easily. There's it is a truck made for a guy who's a building contractor.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely not for me. And that's most of the people that I know that have any kind of like big massive truck like that, they are hauling shit. Like they've got so much lumber in the back of it, and it's usually construction guys or renovation guys. The vast majority of, I think, the everyday truck that I see here in town is Tacomas. Like for whatever reason, Toyotas are super popular here in Boise.
Yeah, and Toyota makes a great truck, and I mean, if you look at where wars are being fought, uh, there's a whole lot of Toyota trucks that are
Yeah.
that are
Hilux is a really, really nice truck. It's got a really good history.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, there's uh there's I think Tesla, there I think I you know there Tesla is you know Musk has a specific market. And if you look at Twitter, X now, that is exactly who Musk's market is.
Yeah.
He is marketing to the people who are on X every day, who and the people on X are Musk fanatics. They're like MAGA people, but they're MAGA for Musk. And
I
go ahead.
I I think that that's one of the weird parts about what X has become, though, is because so much of that content is driven algorithmically that it kind of pats itself on the back a lot to sound that way because I like the vast majority of what I follow on X is video games because of my buddy that works for Microsoft and I'm on there for that specifically. So the amount of the young video game community that is very vocally outspoken about the things that are going on that platform is interesting because it does get drowned out by the things that I get suggested. And this is like when I was paying for the Twitter Premium when he was first introducing it for like $8 a month, and I went from okay, there's a lot of gaming related suggestions, and now I have Kevin Sorbo. But why do I need Kevin Sorbo? Why do I need Turning Point? Why do I need Kyle Rittenhouse? Like this is not the stuff that I normally had. And I think that their algorithm definitely pats itself on the back a little bit to make sure that it seems like it's more of that echo chamber.
Yeah, I have a feed on my X account that I call pastoral popcorn.
Okay.
Um, so it's all these Christian guys who are basically jerks. I mean that's what they do. They get on X and they complain about anybody who doesn't have the exact same beliefs as them. They're always railing on some social agenda, uh you know uh whether or not you should ordain women as pastors, or what how you should respond to transgender people, and or how you should uh respond to gay. And I'm one of these people. It's like, so like, I mean, I'll use the Catholic Church as an example. So the Catholic Church is like, yeah, we're not going to do gay marriage. We're just not going to do it. Um, and you can understand that, right? But there's
That's
nothing.
their decision. That's their beliefs. They believe it's a sin. They don't want to do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to accept you into their congregation, but it does mean that, hey, if you're a part of our congregation, you'll understand our perspective, and you probably won't ask us to do it because you recognize where we're coming from.
Yeah, and like for me as a Catholic, I am not like obligated in any way, shape, or form to judge somebody else's sexuality. There's and so and it's like, I mean, I sometimes want to ask these guys, how many gay people have asked you to perform their wedding? Because I'm willing to bet that it's like at most two. Because there's not a whole lot. So how on earth are you like every week you've got something to say about somebody who's not who's just not
Hey,
on your
just
rate?
just reminding all of you guys, we're not going to support the gays with their wedding endeavors. Okay, reminding you all. Remember, 10% in the offering bucket.
Yeah, I'm. It's like there's there and then it's like when you get when if you're not a person who's going to be doing that, if you're not going to be marrying somebody, what do you have that says, "Oh, well, man, I've gotta make sure that everybody around me knows exactly what I believe about everything else." And it's just it so anyway, so that's what my
It's a mandate
pastoral
from God, clearly. Clearly.
yeah, that's what that those are the people that are on my pastoral popcorn feed, and I just go there to kind of laugh, and if there's any positive thing that I get out of it, it's the awareness of the echo chamber, because I'll go to that feed and I'll see the exact same post being forwarded by this guy, commented by that guy. And it's like the one thing that everybody is talking about. But it has. I'm willing to bet that it has absolutely nothing to do with anything that's taken place that week for them. You know, in their church, and like this June, every year, the Southern Baptist Convention. I mean, because that's what they are. They're a convention. So
Right.
the Southern, so they have a convention every year, and people from all the churches go, and they make resolutions, and they vote on those resolutions, and they do the business of the convention. But then as soon as the convention's over, everybody goes back to their churches, and there's a financial cooperation, so they give money, but there's no. It's not like there's a uh, you know a national hierarchy to where
No,
a
it's more
bab
like a think tank of ideas.
yeah, kind of, yeah, that's a good way to that's a good way to put it. But it's one of those things, so it's like, how many times does should we ordain women as pastors come up in the average Southern Baptist church across the country?
Well, if they keep asking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that it's like, oh, okay, well, we don't do that. Okay, well, we don't do that. So if it, there's so, maybe I'll go to an eco Presbyterian denomination, or there's all kinds of places where you can go. Um,
And find
uh,
your people and
yeah,
find your way of being accepted and finding your community that and I think that that's one of the things that's uh in one perspective can look like very much an inconsistency in the church as a whole, or could be looked at as the diversity within the church. And it's probably a message that the church could do a much better job on the messaging of, hey, if you come and you look long enough, you'll find where you fit in, and you'll probably find something that really works for you, and there'll be a community of people that are similar to you. You're probably going to have more misses than hits, and then once you find that hit, you just stick with it.
yeah. So it's there anyway. So that pastoral popcorn. The thing that I was trying to the point I was trying to make was, yeah, X is an echo chamber, and if you post something, it's going to be liked by people who like what you posted, and then they're going to see more of you, and since they like you, so it's just like
The
it's
snake eating itself.
yeah, and some of the people. I mean, I like some of the feeds, so there's uh I follow military people, and I follow some news sources, and I follow, um, uh, some things that are interesting for me. So I follow like scientists, and but I don't follow scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye the Science Guy. I mean, I follow Sarah Walker, and people who are
Doing
there's
science and not TV personalities.
yeah, science is a profession of questions, not a profession of answers.
This
There's
is I prefer my social media in the form of Reddit. I'm just gonna go to the communities that I like and see what people within those communities are gonna post. And then I get my nature is metal to remind myself where I'm at on the pecking order of things. And it's just a nice, good mix of everything.
Yeah, my Instagram feed is they've got me figured out. They really do. They've got me figured out because it is a hoot. They just show me videos and I crack up. They're just hilarious.
I uh I I think Instagram was paying attention to my Reddit history because now Instagram has found my dark sense of humor. And oh, I didn't realize Instagram had it in it. Good on you.
there's, there's yeah, it's hilarious. And I can't tell you how many there. It's like there's a German guy who's a chiropractor for animals.
Yeah, I've seen that guy.
Yeah, there's it's hilarious. It's like he's cracking the back of a snake, and I'm like,
Who
there's
thought of that?
yeah, he's got like this little snake in his hand, and he's moving with his thumbs, and it's like crack, and the snake's like, "Oh, hey, that felt good," you know.
I love the videos whenever you have like a Rottweiler and like their head gets cracked and they're like, "What did you just do? What on earth happened?"
Yeah. So anyway, so there's I guess X is my serious social media. Instagram is just my silly social media. It's just fun. And Facebook is like, okay, so this is where it's pretty much all my old army buddies.
Yeah,
Almost all my old
Facebook is basically what I think it was initially meant to be, and this is the funny part. Like people think that Facebook has become irrelevant, but for the generation that keeps using Facebook, it genuinely is the yearbook that it was supposed to be. Because I don't do anything on Facebook. The only reason I have it is because Sue actually had gotten mad at me once when I was going to delete everything, and that was one of the ways that she keeps up with me. So the only people that are on Facebook for me are like direct family members or people that I've known for 15, 20 years. And that's the way that we all keep a hold of each other.
Yep, that's same with me. I mean, I got,
Because I know not everyone wants to see what I'm posting on Instagram. Not everyone wants to see me shirtless. Uh, and on that note, I have date night with Haley that I need to get ready
Nice.
for.
Enjoy your date.
Yeah, so we're gonna do a little bit of an earlier episode tonight than most of our episodes. But for everyone who's been listening, again, we appreciate you guys so much. This is actually our 10th episode, so we've been doing it for 2.5 months, and that's the fact that you guys are listening is giving us more encouragement to do this. So I really appreciate it. If this is your first episode with us, thank you again for taking the time to listen to us. If you liked what you hear, go ahead and give us a subscribe in Spotify, Amazon Music. We're also on YouTube. If you like or thumbs up anything, we would certainly appreciate it. And if there's anything that you want to hear us discuss from the perspective of people that are ideologically misaligned sometimes, drops a note in the comments, and we'd love to hear what it is that you guys have to think. But until then, thank you guys again for listening to the Supper Talk podcast. Be well.
Take care, y'all.